October had draped the Irish countryside in a cloak of russet and gold. I had always found solace walking on the narrow roads lined with thick woods. But this year was different. Halloween was approaching, and the air seemed laden with an unsettling energy. As I meandered through the forest path, a gust of wind carried a haunting tune, like a distant whistle. I chalked it up to my imagination, but that small voice in the back of my head whispered, "The CO.AG." That evening, I found myself at the local pub. Perhaps it was the chill in the air that drove everyone indoors, or maybe the village was also feeling the unease I sensed earlier. Sean, the grizzled pub owner, caught my eye. "You know, lad, people say they've been hearing the whistle of the CO.AG," he murmured, pouring a dark stout into a glass. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. "Do you believe in it, Sean?" He looked at me with stern eyes. "It's better not to question, but to prepare. Halloween's coming." The following week, I found a small wooden box outside my doorstep. Inside were salt and iron nails, with a note, "For your protection." I couldn't shake the dread that had settled in my bones. October 31st came with a sky void of stars. I heard it, the unmistakable sound of wheels on a dirt road, and then the whistle. It was closer now, too close. A sudden, ear-piercing shriek filled the room, rattling the windows. I nearly jumped out of my skin, convinced for a second that it was the cry of the banshee. But then I realized it was just the wind. Gathering my courage, I grabbed the box of salt and iron nails and stepped outside. And there it was. The death coach, spectral and ghastly, drawn by dark, ominous horses. Time seemed to slow as it neared me. My hand trembled as I threw a handful of salt towards it. Just as I thought it was working, the coach's door burst open, revealing nothing but an insatiable darkness that seemed to pull me in. In a last desperate attempt, I threw the iron nails. The coach let out a horrid, unnatural sound, as if the very air around it was tearing. And then it vanished. I woke up to find myself lying on the road. Was it a dream? I walked back to my house, my entire body shaking, only to find the wooden box, now empty. After that horrifying night, you would think that my life would go back to normal, that the sun would chase away all shadows. But some shadows linger even in the brightest daylight. Every time I passed a mirror in my small cottage, I saw my face, only it was distorted, as if the mirror itself were holding onto a remnant of the terror I had experienced. It was a few days after Halloween when there was a knock on my door. A figure stood there, garbed in a cloak, their face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Good evening," the stranger said, voice barely above a whisper. "May I come in?" Some instinct held me back. "Who are you?" "That is not important. What is important is what you escaped, and how." Intrigued yet fearful, I invited them in. The stranger pulled out an old, tattered book and laid it on the table. Pages filled with old Gaelic text and crude sketches of spectral entities lay before me. "You faced the CO.AG and lived. Do you know why?" "Salt and iron nails?" I suggested. "Those are wards, yes, but not strong enough to banish it. You were spared for reasons yet unclear." It was exactly 1 week after that first fateful encounter that I heard it again. The haunting whistle in the wind, only now it felt like a mocking call. As I pondered this, a high-pitched scream erupted from nowhere, shaking the walls of my house. It silenced as abruptly as it started, leaving me in a heart-pounding silence. I knew then that the death coach would come for me again, and this time I wasn't so sure salt and iron would be enough. Not willing to take any chances, I took out every protective measure I could think of: talismans, circles of salt, prayers, and incantations. The stranger's words haunted me. "You were spared for reasons yet unclear." It arrived with the same eerie splendor, wheels barely touching the ground, horses snorting mist. But this time, I was prepared. Or at least, I thought I was. Just as I steadied myself, the circle of salt around me was abruptly scattered by an unseen force, breaking the protective barrier. The door of the death coach swung open, revealing an endless void. In that moment, a flood of realization hit me. The coach of Bauer was not just a harbinger of death, but a messenger. It offered understanding, an abyss to peer into, to see the truth of life and death. Taking a deep breath, I stepped closer, and as I did, the void seemed to pull away, revealing a shadowy figure. It was the stranger, standing inside the coach, holding the tattered book. Sometimes, the only way to escape death is to understand it. Will you come? The stranger's words hung in the air like a shroud. I had two choices: step into the unknown with this mysterious figure, or remain in my life with the everlasting shadow of the coach, a Bauer, hanging over me. I need an answer, the stranger said, urgency slipping into their tone for the first time. I looked at the gloved hand, then back at the stranger's obscured face. Finally, I made my decision. I took a deep breath and stepped into the coach. The moment I entered, the coach turned into something different. It was no longer a confined space, but an abyss, endless and infinite. Sporadic flashes illuminated otherworldly landscapes, realms that defied logic and understanding. "It's time you knew," the stranger said, pulling back their hood. What I saw was not a face, but an ever-changing visage, as if the very fabric of their being was in flux. "I am neither alive nor dead, neither human nor spirit. I am a keeper of thresholds, and you have crossed one." The book from earlier floated into the abyss before us, pages flipping until they stopped at a sketch of the death coach, with a list of names beside it. My heart sank as I saw my own name among them. Your actions, your choices, they add layers to your life, thresholds crossed and uncrossed, and sometimes they give you the ability to stand between realms, the keeper said. As suddenly as it all began, I found myself back on the dirt road. The death coach was dissolving into a wisp of mist, blending into the fog that marked the breaking dawn. You have your life, but remember, a threshold once crossed can be approached again. We shall meet, the keeper's voice echoed, even as they vanished. I was transported back to my cottage, still trembling but filled with a newfound understanding. The box of salt and iron nails lay on the table, untouched since that night, a relic of a simpler time. Would life ever be the same? No. But as I looked out of the window, the sun rising to chase away the remnants of the night, I realized some thresholds are meant to be crossed, even if they lead us to the unknown. And in that unknown, sometimes, is where we find ourselves.